Perfect. I think we're live. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Hey, Dan, how are you?
George, how you doing? Great to see you as always.
Yeah, I am doing well. It's been a fun day of content creation here. I did a webinar this morning with one of our partners in Belgium. It was awesome. Now we're here doing this. And today's topic is kind of cool because it kind of can help people when they're doing that sort of thing. So what are we doing today? What are we showing off?
Well, today we're covering a pretty cool topic. I think this one's really fun. We're talking about motion backgrounds. And motion backgrounds are a really great way to enhance your presentation, to make your layouts more dynamic, to bring a sort of a broadcast quality feel to your program. And we want to show how you can do that today, and also where to look to find some cool motion backgrounds that you can integrate into your production.
Yeah, so as you guys can see, we are playing with one down below us there.
What is this
Um,
one? This one's crazy.
Yeah,
Pretty
some
wild.
some pixely waves or framework waves. Anyway, but some of the reasons you might want to do this is obviously it adds a nice visual, and that really kind of just enhances your viewer's experience. So you might be doing a keynote speech or a presentation or running many of the virtual conferences we're starting to see these days, and you just want to add a little extra dimension to it. A flat solid color background is kind of boring. And so you can certainly go to more interesting, backgrounds that are a picture, but still kind of static. Adding that motion really kind of changes it. It makes it more like the news. And it's actually exactly what news broadcasters do all the time. They're generally sitting in a room with green screens, and all the other stuff is fake. But that's a pretty common one as well.
Yeah, I think people have really come to expect that when you see something like a 2-up layout or a 3-up or some more advanced layouts, people have really come to expect that the background is moving. That's something that we've become quite accustomed to with the way news programming works today. So it's something we've seen used quite well in a number of different applications. And yeah, there's some, maybe we can talk a little bit about how we do it here at Epiphan.
Yeah,
So
so we have a few examples I think that we can show off on instances where we've done it in our own productions, and maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. So in a couple of examples we have here from previous episodes and webinars, we've used motion backgrounds in both of these cases. They were very minor, not quite as active as the one we're using right now, but they were there. They just had sort of a color shimmer to it, if that's kind of a right descriptive word for it. There's just the gradient changed a little bit.
yeah, it's nice to just add some color and add a little bit of movement. And I mean, the background we're using right now is pretty wild. But most often I would actually suggest using something that's very subtle that doesn't distract from your primary your primary point of interest in your presentation or with your cameras. But yeah, I think we've used some nice, subtle, slower moving backgrounds, which I find look really, really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a number of ways that you can leverage this as well. You can full screen things on top of it. You could chroma key out somebody and kind of overlay them on top of it that way, make them more inside that. You can chroma key background elements, and there's a lot of ways of playing with these in terms of how you might want to leverage it. There's no right or wrong. It's just a creative touch, I suppose. Um, we've often used the kind of 2-up with that kind of just nice flow, wavy movement in the background that's changing it just to makes it nice, makes it look good.
Yeah, and I'm in my kitchen. I like the point that you mentioned using a chroma key, because I'm sort of in my kitchen right now. But usually I have a chroma key behind me, or a green screen rather. And if you were to chroma out that green screen, you could just have there's the setup I have today. You see, I've got my mini over here. That's how I'm sending my feed to our studio for this broadcast. But yeah, ordinarily I would be in my office. I have my green screen behind me, and what you can actually do is simply chroma key yourself out, and then you can kind of move your body, just yourself around on the frame anywhere you want, and actually create the effect that you're sort of right in front of the background, which is super cool effect. I think we see that a lot on Twitch and a lot of other streaming applications, people like to use that sort of chroma key effect with their backgrounds. It can look really cool as well.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's just, you can get super creative with it. It's just what do you want it to look like? We didn't set it up this way today. I do have a green screen behind me, and I'm adding my background artificially, but it's possible that sending my stream, as we've done in previous episodes, they could just key out my background entirely, and I could just be floating on these waves that we have behind us right now. It would look a little strange because of where my camera framing is cutting me off, but it depends, especially if you have a longer framing where someone might be down to their waist or something. You could fit them behind a fake desk with some movement and stuff like that, and that could be really interesting effect as well. But where do we get these things? I guess first of all, where did we even find all of these?
Yeah, well, fortunately, motion backgrounds are probably one of the easiest things to make or to find on royalty-free stock asset websites. So here, a couple of recommendations that we would make is Pexels or Pixabay. There's a lot of cool stuff on there. A bunch of the motion backgrounds you can find for free, in fact, on YouTube, and download them right off of YouTube. Another place to look is, you could go Shutterstock. I like Video Blocks, actually. Video Blocks is sort of a video asset website, and it's, I think, something like $100 for a year-long subscription with unlimited access, and they have thousands of motion backgrounds on there. You can find something in any color or any design style, and then you could even take those and modify them, change the colors in After Effects, or build one yourself in After Effects if you're up to the task of trying to stretch your creative muscles. So lots of easy places and easy ways to find motion backgrounds. If you know someone who's a video graphics person, you could ask them to make you one. It's not too difficult. But the other thing you could do is try to get creative yourself, and you could even record something with your camera. If you have a nice landscape outside, you could record something and make your own motion background. We're using some that are a little more, I would say, 3D motion graphics style, but it doesn't have to be something out of Blade Runner to look really nice. So use your creativity and find a solution.
Well, one of the things they often do on network news and stuff like that is they'll put a camera on the roof. Here in Ottawa, Canada, they might shoot the Parliament buildings, and then they're just going to bring that in as a background behind the anchor or whoever's doing it to make it look like they're shooting through a window of Parliament. They don't have that real estate; it doesn't exist, but they can fake it. So there's cool ways of doing that from either a pre-recorded clip, or if you really want to go for it, you could try to do something live, but there's lots of ways of playing with that and making it more dynamic. And it seems subtle, but it does actually make it more engaging. So we kind of switched to a two-up talking ahead here, and this is something you might very commonly see on the news, and two people going back and forth. And this background's a little more subtle than the previous one, but
yeah, I like this one.
Yeah, but it's nice. It's simple. Gets the job done. So that's an option. Of course, you can add all the other graphics and bugs and stuff like that as well, depending on what you want to create and how you want to do it. So you mentioned using video clips from these different sources, but how do we get that into our production? And in this case, we use our own pearls, of course, as I hope all of our viewers do as well. But if you're using Pearl, how do we get these motion backgrounds into Pearl?
Yeah, well, I think the first and most obvious option is to simply run a video source. So it could be a computer, it could be a monitor running some content, but basically you would inject that into your Pearl using an HDMI input, and it's really quite simple. You could set that up as a second monitor on your laptop, so that you would just essentially connect into your Pearl using HDMI.
Yeah, and that's, again, it is super easy. Those are tools that, of course, pretty much everybody's going to have on hand for the most part. What it also means is that whatever content you want to use, if you can play it on the computer, that means you can use it as the background, essentially. So that gives you a ton of flexibility in how you might set that up. So that's pretty cool. We've seen people do it with dedicated devices they've built. Like we've seen people build a Raspberry Pi that just has that content loaded on there, just this tiny little box they can, even dangle off the back of a Pearl in some cases, and just it just runs a loop essentially. It just runs a nonstop loop of that content, and that's your background. So that can be an easy way to do it as well.
Yeah. Now let's talk about another way. Maybe you don't have an HDMI cable, or maybe you're not in the same room with your media playback system. That's not a problem, because you can get your motion background into Pearl using NDI, and that way you're also keeping that HDMI input unpopulated, so you could perhaps have another camera source or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or NDI has some other advantages, of course. Being on the network, it means you don't necessarily have to have the computer within HDMI cable length of, that sort of thing. So, NDI offers a lot of options. You can install the software on a computer or other devices. The NDI toolkit gives you a bunch of different ways of leveraging this for static or motion backgrounds, and depending on how you want to leverage it. And again, we just connect to that as an NDI input on Pearl, which is pretty straightforward to do. And there you go, integrate it into your production. It can be that straightforward, which is great. One of the tips either way you choose is you want to look at making sure you don't mess up what the content's supposed to look like either. I'm going to touch on that in a second, but any of these things, building it's very easy, whether it's HDMI or NDI. You go into Pearl's layout editor, you play around with the layout editor, be as creative as you want to fit all your different layers on top of each other. And you mentioned After Effects earlier, but it's like doing things in Photoshop or other things, right? You're just building layers. It's pretty logical.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think is really cool, and what creates a great layout is when you have many layers. So your motion background is sort of like the anchor point. It's sort of the backdrop that sort of builds the theme of your layout. But we could get more fancy even in the layout that we have here by having some more layers over top, like we see the lower third that we just ran right now. You could have some frames around your camera crops, which can look really nice as well. So there's a lot of ways to sort of build that dimension to your layouts, and the motion background is a really great starting point for that.
Yeah, for sure. So we have some tips, I think, on how to do some of this, or well, we can look at, for anyone who hasn't done it before, adding NDI on Pearl 2 is really easy. You click Add Input, it'll automatically detect NDI sources. You click Add, you're done, essentially. It really is that simple. That's definitely one of the advantages. Yeah, so it can be that easy. Your harder work is probably what your NDI source is, what computer you're using and what software you're using on there to kind of set that up. And again, the NDI toolkit's a great place to start, as it's, NewTek has that available for free to download, so it's super easy to start there. But that'll give you plugins that you can use in other stuff too. So you can even run this in VLC, pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's pretty familiar with VLC. It's free. The NDI plugin is free, so super easy way to get that NDI source into your Pro.
And of course, VLC is going to play basically anything. So any video file or anything like that you want to use as your background, VLC is going to play it, and then configuring these outputs to send it out over NDI or HDMI out of your computer, makes it easy to get into Pearl over one of those methods. I guess the main thing there is that if we are using something like VLC, we don't want to see the controls. Yeah. That's maybe the number one tip to do this on a simple level is, you want to make sure that your loop is perfect. And what do we mean by a perfect loop, I guess, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, do we have any other backgrounds that we can try? Maybe we'll take a look at some other examples for our show right now. Oh, there we go. I like this one. So this one's nice and subtle. So the loop is essentially, that video clip that we have playing in our motion background right now. It's probably something like, 10 or 20 or 30 seconds long. At the end of that video clip, it's going to loop. So you want that loop to be seamless, which means that the last frame of that video clip should match the first frame of the video clip. And if you go searching on some of these stock asset websites, sometimes they don't always loop well. Well, you can solve that problem in Adobe Premiere or After Effects, some editing software is an easy way to solve that problem by just sort of doing a little cross dissolve at the at that seam where the end and the beginning line up in your loop. So, another thing you could do is if you find that your motion background, like the one we have right now, is a little distracting, I'd even say, with the speed of it. But you could slow that down and make it more subtle, or do some little editing tricks to make it work a little better. So that's what we mean by a perfect loop. I think the other tip that we have here actually is kind of relevant to us right now is avoid busy and distracting backgrounds. So obviously what we have right now is probably, I would say, busy and distracting, but I think the reason we did that was to make it really obvious today. But if we can switch back to some of those more subtle motion backgrounds, you can kind of channel the viewer's attention to where you really want it, which is probably on your presentation or your camera crop. So
yeah, for sure. And again, we're kind of using that one intentionally for fun and to demonstrate it. But the other thing we can do, the other tip there, of course, is hiding the controls, which we already mentioned. One of the ways you can do that is obviously some media players, when like VLC, for example, when they loop, might show the controls. They might not. It kind of depends. But of course, if you're bringing this into Pearl, you can always use Pearl's cropping ability to just trim out the UI elements of whatever's playing your background. And that should help clean that up for you and make sure that, anything in those peripheries of the signal are not seen. And so that can be very valuable as well. Pretty simple and straightforward to do. So it's nice to do that. Just make it as clean as possible.
Yeah. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Exactly.
That's what I like to say. So I think that about covers it. I don't know. Is there any questions in chat or anybody,
Yeah, so not really any questions in chat, but if anyone does have any questions, please throw them into chat right now. Kim was making a comment there, the new version of Pearl, can you do directly on Pearl? Sadly, no. Pearl Nano is smaller than Pearl Mini and Pearl 2, so it's not going to be necessarily making gains on certain things that require more performance than its bigger brothers. But yes, fair point that, if playing clips is a way of doing this kind of thing to a degree as well, but can make the perfect loop difficult. So, I suppose the other way is make really long loops, but that's not always perfect either. So it depends. So if anyone does have any questions, please throw them into chat. We're happy to address those. But otherwise, experiment, play with it, find ones you like at those places we mentioned before. Maybe we'll get someone to throw those URLs into chat if someone's interested in them. And I think it's interesting. I think it's fun, and I think it just being more dynamic with your content really helps engage the audience.
Yeah, enhance your production value a little bit, and create something that's a little more exciting than just what people are accustomed to with a Zoom call or a video conference style layout. Speaking of exciting, I wanted to mention something as well. Epiphan has been just released, I believe, the second edition of the Evolution magazine. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, George.
Yeah, so this is the second edition. We released the first edition last year. Evolution magazine is our own Epiphan magazine. We have all kinds of articles and tech bits and even some, biographies of Epiphan employees in there. It's really interesting, covering lots of cool topics. It is being released basically right now. There's an online copy available on our website. I believe it's epiphan.com/mag, or of course there's a link on the homepage. So please check that out, and I hope you enjoy that content. Our writers work super hard putting that stuff together, and there's some great articles in this piece, actually. Some really, really interesting stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy reading through that. Again, just check out epiphan.com. There'll be links on the homepage, and you can get a copy of that. I guess the other thing is next week's episode, we're going to be looking at multi-camera live streaming setups, maybe a 2020 revisited version. Things have changed.
Yeah, no
So we need to we need to figure out, what that looks like now.
It's
So we're
also,
going to
I
be
think,
covering that.
I think it's cool just like how much easier it is now. Like, I think we covered that topic maybe years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years, something like that. It's amazing how much easier it is now to do a multi-camera set. I mean, I'm doing it right now with my cell phone. Actually, why don't we switch back to my kitchen view again, and we'll take another peek at that. But it's all I have to do is set up an NDI or rather an SRT source, and there we go. We're doing it, right on the app from my phone. So if you have a cell phone, you can set up a multicam production, and I think it's just really cool how easy it is to do that now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kim did mention in chat just now, is it possible to play the video background and send it in via NDI? And with Pearl 2, yes, you absolutely can. Pearl 2 can bring in that NDI feed from whatever's sending out the NDI feed and whatever content is being played from that NDI source. So again, there's a few different applications that can help you do that, including VLC once the NDI plugins are installed. And that's one of the ways we do it. So yeah, you can definitely check that out. It's pretty great.
Well, great hanging out with you today, George, on Live at Epiphan. Yeah. I know you've had a busy day of streaming all over the internet, so we won't take up much more of your time. But thanks for hanging out. It was great to see you as always, and look forward to Live at Epiphan show next week.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me in your kitchen today, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, I'm getting pretty hungry. I haven't had lunch yet, so I might throw frozen pizza or something in the oven here, and I'll be all set.
Yeah, convenient that way, the set and the practical all in one.
All in one.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Of course, remember to like, follow, subscribe, do all those socially things on all the socially places. And we'll be back next week with another Live at Epiphan talking about, again, next week we mentioned talking about live streaming setups with multiple cameras. But there's always something cool to talk about here Live at Epiphan to help you improve your streaming. So join us next week, and every Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern, we're here doing these. So thanks everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye now.